you're talking to a large contingent of people who are like myself on some type of a carnivore diet or an animal forward type of a diet. You and I on the train right back, we had a great conversation and talked about how neither one of us like to be dogmatic. I want to ask you some questions about your experience with veganism, the reason you do it, which is always a noble reason, regardless of what that reason is. And I just want to say, I want to come at this as an experiential kind of a way, not as an argumentative way. I'm not going to argue with anybody. I'm going to get tons of hate messages from people in the carnivore space that think I'm not pushing you enough on different issues. And I'm just going to say to those people, I appreciate it, but you can host Matt on your podcast.
Sure.
We're doing it on our podcast.
I'm not scared.
Perfect. I do want to start at the very beginning. When was it that you started to develop a passion for, movement that then bled into nutrition, or maybe I've got that one way or another? How did you start to be interested in health to begin with?
I've always been kind of interested in health. I've been a mover my whole life. I mean, some people will joke around about getting a pull-up, and I'm like, I don't remember when I didn't have a pull-up, because I've always just been able to do pull-ups my whole life. And I've always been involved in some sort of sport. If it wasn't a sport, I was, skateboarding or, playing pickup basketball, whatever around the neighborhood, or, going to hardcore shows and dancing or whatever. I've just been active my whole life. I got into veganism through the hardcore punk scene. A lot through a couple of my older friends that were already vegan. And then I started listening to bands like Earth Crisis and Green Rage and some other bands that, they sung about veganisms and more, towards the animal rights part of that whole movement, which, I mean, veganism at its core is animal rights. There's no really ifs, ands, and buts about it. I was talking to you on the train about veganism to me has never been a diet. Yes, it is way more plant forward than most diets, because we're abstaining from animal products, but it's more of a philosophy. So that's, to me, when I first started being vegan, I wasn't healthy. I lived off rice for 6 months at a time because I was a poor West Side kid that didn't have a lot of support from my parents, because I grew up a meat and potatoes family, and they basically disowned me. They did not like my choice to not, I mean, plus we were definitely on a fixed income, and to them, vegetables for some reason were expensive, even though they weren't. There was that I mean, obviously I grew up in a place called West Valley and Kearns, which was kind of a food desert as well, compared to my friends on the west side on the east side that had their fancy health food stores and stuff. We didn't have that where I grew up, so it was a little harder to be vegan in a more healthy manner. But for me, it wasn't about the health. It was more about creating the least amount of damage possible in a global aspect. Especially being only 14 years old, global was kind of hard to think about. I was thinking more about hey, just what can I do personally to inflict the least amount of damage, and that's it. And another thing I thought about was animals don't hurt me, so I don't want to hurt them. It was that simple. It had nothing to do with what a lot of other people think about. It's a lot more simple of an explanation. I think some people try to overthink it a little bit. And to me, it was just very simple. And growing up where, we kind of grew up, not far away from each other in the Salt Lake Valley. A lot of people always try to bring religion into it. That's why they eat meat and all that stuff. They try, always use that, hey, this is why you should. And I was like, hey, that's your thing. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life and how to practice your religion. I'm like, this is just what I believe. But I was never one to really push that on other people and tell them they had to believe same things I had to believe. So, I mean, I was a very young person, and I seen multiple people, try to adopt this and not last very long, because maybe they had a harsh reaction of their body because they weren't doing it in a healthy way, and they didn't have the fortitude to even keep going with it. And I never judged them. I was just hey, that's their thing. They lasted 2 years. That was you know, that was less damage than they would have committed if they weren't vegan for those 2 years. So I'm a little on the stubborn side as well. So, um, don't get me wrong. I'll tell you right now, and the vegans probably, that if there's any vegans that ever listen, they're going to get mad at me. I did not like the taste of meat. I loved it. My favorite thing growing up was shake and bake pork chops. And to this day, I still remember how good that tasted to me. But I was willing to give up that pleasure and that taste because I just cared about veganism and not inflicting that harm on animals. So
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. Like I said earlier, I think every vegan chooses it for a noble reason. And what you're saying, like, is even more noble in my opinion, that it's not like you didn't have the taste for meat. You can still like taste it today. And you made that sacrifice for a specific reason. That's very impressive, dude. I've always really respected that about you. How has your diet changed over time? Like, what things have you learned about, living a plant-based lifestyle or the vegan lifestyle, like made you, change or focus on different things over time?
I mean, I've had to really concentrate on getting protein because, not getting animal protein, we almost have to get more protein than people that can eat animal protein because of the bioavailability. And I had to come to terms with that because I was very stubborn. We're like, no, we don't need that much protein, and I'd always be like, as long as we get the minimum amount, we're fine. And that might be fine if you don't train and you don't want to gain muscle and all that stuff. If you're just getting that base amount, that's fine for just like general health. But, I've always wanted to do something to do with performance or, body composition. So I had to learn that I had to get the right amount of amino acids, the right kind of amino acids, the right balance of amino acids. So that's been huge. I've had to learn what supplements were more important than others because I didn't want to just be this like supplement head, you know? So basically, I don't really take a lot of supplements. I take a protein supplement because, I mean, it just helps with the recovery and repair muscle tissue. And there's so many great things about just protein in general. You know that. We're both nutrition guys. Um, but the bigger things like, usually when I tell people I'm vegan, they turn into, dietitians themselves, which usually they're not. And the first question they ask is the protein question. That's the most common. But I've noticed as people have been more educated about veganism, they usually talk about like vitamin K2, vitamin B12, like these things, DHA, which are very easy to get from plant sources. So I do a DHA supplement that's from algae, and it's a really good source. People have been bringing up iron more. Iron is a good one to talk about because there's so many essential functions from iron. Usually, I cook with a cast iron pan. I do dark green leafy vegetables, and then also I make sure to get enough vitamin C to help that iron work better. And as you know, there's no form of hemi iron that you can get in a vegan diet. So I can only get the non-hemi version of iron, but with that dark green leafy and cooking in a cast iron pan and getting vitamin C and making sure I have all my other vitamins covered, I'm pretty good. I mean, it's crazy to think that when I was little, before I ever went vegan, I was anemic. So obviously I was iron deficient and I drank tons of regular milk, ate meat, and I was still anemic. I have never been anemic by being vegan.
Wow.
So obviously something's working. And I will say, when it comes to this, everybody's body is different. Everybody's body creates different enzymes. So everybody uses things differently. So that's why I don't push people to just eat the way I eat because their body might have different reactions to different things. So
Yeah.
in that way, I try to be more agnostic, kind of like we learn in precision nutrition. We learn to be more agnostic when it comes to nutrition, and I try to keep that approach, especially when I'm working with clients with their nutrition, because I'm not trying to push my ethics on anybody, and I don't think anybody ever should. That's just me personally. So I try to see what they like and how they eat, and try to work around what they eat, what they like, and then we try to just optimize it.
Yeah. Well, I love that approach. Like you mentioned, we have the same nutrition certification, and I would approach it the same way. I love how you're dedicated to what you're doing for the ethical reasons, and you found workarounds to certain things. Like I was going to ask you about supplementation. Iron was going to be a concern. You found a way to work with that. The vitamin C thing, I was not aware of that. I think that's amazing. Like you found ways to kind of get around some of those things. So the supplements you take a DHA supplement that comes from algae. Protein, yeah, it's a supplement. I don't think of it as a supplement. I think of it more of like a food technically, but
Yeah,
we can call
it's
it a
more for
supplement.
convenience, really.
Yeah.
Just getting more protein in during the day.
Pea protein kind of a thing.
Yeah, protein. Sometimes I'll do a mix of like pea with like it has like some more of the ancient grains in there, like amanareth and like other grains like quinoa, stuff like that inside of it. So sometimes I'll do a rice protein. It just depends on, but mostly it's like a pea isolate.
Got it. Okay. And then any other supplementations that you take
I
regularly?
mean, not really. Sometimes I'll take a multivitamin. Let me think what else. Sometimes I'll
Creatine?
creatine. Creatine's actually a big one. I am a huge fan of creatine.
Too.
I push creatine. This is one I do push. I push creatine to essentially everybody. I think it's great for everybody because it's the most studied supplement out there, and they're finding new and more benefits from it. You know, the cognitive things that come with creatine. I mean, obviously, I have to take creatine monohydrate. There is other creatines out there, but creatine monohydrate's the only vegan kind because it's just made in a lab.
Got it.
So that's the only kind that I can't take the other ones because obviously they come from an animal liver. Um, so I mean, creatine monohydrate's been great, and I just get the cheapest kind in bulk and just make sure to keep consistent of my 5 grams a day. And that's it. Oh, and I do take a beetroot powder, and that's more for just red blood cell thing, especially if I'm doing lots of endurance stuff. It really helps increase my red blood cell count. So I do a beetroot powder.
Got it.
So
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. No, I would have expected like a whole laundry list of all kinds of different things that you would be supplementing, and you found ways to work around it without having pill bottles everywhere.
right, and if you know the food you're eating, I mean most of it you can get most of the stuff from the food you eat. Right. And there's some things devote like DHA is really hard for me to get naturally. I mean, algae is a natural resource, but usually you don't go out just pulling algae out of the ocean and eating it, right?
That's true.
But that's also, if you think about it, that's where the fish get that's how you so you get DHA from fish, right?
Yeah.
That's where they get their DHA.
There you go.
Is because they
Yeah.
eat algae.
Cool. Nice. Yeah. That's great. I do want to ask you just like strictness. Like when we say like 30 years, like have you been extremely strict for the 30 years?
I have. I mean, I've had accidental slip ups, which I get very kind of upset about. Like, say something like somebody like they change something in an ingredient, or some companies will do the natural flavors thing on the ingredients list, and they'll just change where their natural flavors because they or legally don't have to put what they are putting in their natural flavors.
Right. Right.
So I just have to do a little bit more research when it comes to if I see something that says natural flavors, I get a little skeptical, and then I just have to research it where their natural flavors come from.
Got it. Okay, awesome. Let's see. I wanted to ask you about the protein, which we've already mentioned. How long did it take you to learn how to balance the proteins? Because that is something you hear that like it's not impossible for sure. The different amino acids in different foods, like was it difficult for you to find the right combinations of those?
Not really, because it's actually pretty simple. And then when I first started learning about this, and you probably same thing happened to you when you first started studying nutrition decades ago, you learned that you had to have a complete protein source in itself within the meal. But then we learned as it goes on, you can have the complete protein over the day, right? So, but I mean, that's easy to make complete proteins too, like rice and beans, complete protein, spaghetti noodles and sauce, complete protein. Like it's not really hard once you start learning about where these amino acids come from, especially that you know that you're already making a lot of the amino acids in your own body. And then we just need the non-essential ones, right? Like the ones that we can't get from our body, or sorry, the ones that we don't make in our body, we need only from food, right? We can only get from food. So obviously we need more of those.
Yeah. I've always found it interesting too that like the food combinations that you mentioned are really part of a lot of you know, I don't know, maybe ancient is a bit of a stretch, but they're part of civilizations that have been around a
Forever.
long time. Like, yeah, when I lived in Brazil for 2 years when I did my LDS mission, like we ate rice and beans all the time, and it was always in that combination. Like that, you can find that all over the place, even in countries that we certainly weren't eating vegetarian or vegan diets in Brazil, but you find those combinations of food that people learn to enjoy together, and you find it kind of all over the world in civilizations that have been around for a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's why they call some of them like ancient grains, right? Like, and they're usually very fortified. Like they have more protein than just normal grains in
Yeah,
them.
And that's
got
how
it.
that's also you see those like high protein noodles.
So I'll even eat those, so it's a little bit more protein. So I mean, I try to go pretty high protein in most of my meals. I try to get anywhere from 30 to 50 grams with every meal.
Got it. Okay,
So
got it. That makes sense.
like
Okay, so
spirulina and like all those things are just so protein packed.